I went camping a few weeks ago in Pinewood Forest. I thought it would help clear my mind after a tough breakup. Just me, the woods, and my thoughts. I wasn't a pro at camping, but I could set up a tent and make a fire. I figured it would be peaceful, a nice digital detox away from everything. I chose a spot near a river. It was quiet at first. The sound of the water put me at ease. But when night fell, everything changed. I heard something. It was faint at first. Just a tapping. I thought maybe it was just branches in the wind, or maybe a woodpecker. But then it kept going. There was a rhythm to it. I remember my heart pounding. I kept thinking it would stop any moment, but it didn't. The following night I could hear the tapping again. This time it felt closer. I stepped out of my tent to look. The moonlight spilled through the trees, and everything looked strange. My heartbeat quickened. I squinted into the darkness but saw nothing. Then, I heard voices. They were soft, like whispers. I wanted to think they weren't real, but I felt cold. I felt like someone was watching me. I didn't know if I should be scared or curious. By the third night, I was a nervous wreck. I tried ignoring the whispers, but they seemed to get louder. I thought I saw shapes moving between the trees. I even found strange symbols carved into the ground near my tent. They weren't random. They looked like someone had made them on purpose. I knelt down to check them out. They stood out against the earth, almost glowing. I felt a chill run through me. Had someone been here before? My mind raced, questioning what I was seeing. Was it all in my head? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I climbed into my tent, clutching my flashlight like it was my only protection. Just then, I heard that tapping again. It was faster, almost desperate. My heart felt like it might burst. I stayed still. I just listened. Then silence. The woods felt heavy, like they were waiting. I could hear nothing but my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Suddenly, a shadow passed by the entrance of my tent. I held my breath and whispered, "Hello?" There was no answer. I grabbed my bag, ready to run. Just as I turned to escape, the whispers returned. They called my name, but nobody was there. I remember stumbling through the brush as I dashed to my car. I've never felt so terrified in my life. I didn't look back, but I still think about that night. What was out there? Why did the forest feel so alive? I don't know if I'll ever understand it, and maybe I don't want to. I didn't sleep well that night after I got home. Each creak of the house made me jump. I tossed and turned, replaying the sounds from the forest. The whispers haunted me. It was as if they were wrapped around my thoughts, squeezing tighter every time I closed my eyes. I thought about calling someone, my friends, my family, but who would understand? The next day, I decided I needed answers. I grabbed my laptop and started looking for anything about Pinewood Forest. I scrolled through countless blogs and forums. Most talked about the beauty of the trees and the serenity of the river. But buried deep in one thread was a mention of something strange, sightings of shadows and voices. I read carefully. Other campers had experienced similar things. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I read about their experiences. Some mentioned the same tapping sound. Others talked of whispers that echoed their names. I felt a mix of anger and fear. Why hadn't I known about this? Why hadn't anyone warned me? Each account felt like a piece of a puzzle that didn't quite fit, but I could feel the pieces surrounding me. The more I read, the more I wanted to scream. But then a thought struck me. What if I wasn't the only one? I wondered if anyone would want to talk about it. Days passed without much sleep, but I decided to take a trip back. There was no way I could shake this feeling without confronting it. I grabbed my gear and drove back to the forest, my heart racing the entire way. I parked in the same spot and stepped into the woods, each footfall crunching against the dry leaves filled with anxiety. It was eerily quiet. I set up my tent faster than I ever had before. I thought about the symbols I had found. My heart pounded as I went to check them again. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that made the trees look even taller and darker. I found the area where they were carved, and they still made my skin crawl. I ran my fingers over them, trying to decipher their meaning. As I stood there, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A figure darted between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. Was it real? It was too quick to make out, but it was definitely there. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched again. Suddenly, the tapping started up, echoing through the stillness. I stiffened and glanced around, desperate to find the source. There was no way I could ignore it again. Then I heard the whispers. My name was clear among them. "Come," they beckoned softly. I felt my body go cold. It was different this time, more urgent, more compelling. I turned back to my tent. I knelt down, my flashlight shaking in my hands. That's when I saw it. Something glimmered beneath the earth just near the symbols. I moved closer, my heart racing. I needed to know what it was. But as I reached for it, the whispers grew louder. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. What were they trying to tell me? Or was it a warning? I pressed my fingers against the cool earth, brushing aside the leaves. The glimmer I'd seen was a small, metal object. My heart quickened. I pulled it from the ground. It was a pendant, shaped like a crescent moon and etched with strange symbols. The whispers intensified, swirling in my ears, urging me to hold it closer. What did it mean? Was this some sort of charm? I turned it over in my fingers, trying to make sense of its purpose. The more I stared at it, the more I felt a strange connection. It was as if the pendant was alive, pulsating with something I couldn't understand. Then suddenly I heard footsteps. They were heavy and unmistakable. I crouched low, panic tightening in my chest. The whispers faded, but the sound of someone or something approaching filled the air. I held my breath, hoping to blend into the shadows. The footsteps stopped just beyond the clearing. I couldn't see who was there, but my gut told me it was dangerous. I had come here seeking answers, but now I was frozen with fear. Should I make a run for it? Just then, a voice broke through the silence, a deep, raspy sound. "You shouldn't have come back." My blood ran cold. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but fear lodged in my throat. Who was this? A park ranger? A fellow camper? The voice continued. "The forest remembers. It doesn't forget those who trespass." I finally mustered the courage to peek around the tree, and that's when I saw him. A figure cloaked in darkness, his face obscured by shadows. He stood still, unmoving, as if he was watching. Panic surged through me. Was he the one who had been whispering earlier? "Leave while you still can," he warned, "or it will take you too." What did he mean? It. I felt the pendant grow warmer in my hand, and before I could think, I slipped it into my pocket. The warning had sent a jolt of clarity through me. I needed to get out of there. I turned to bolt toward my tent, but as I did, the whispers returned, louder than ever, rising from the ground like a rising tide. "Stay!" they urged. "Stay!" With each step I took, I could feel the earth shift beneath me, almost as if the forest was alive, trying to pull me back. I gasped, fighting against the urge to listen. I wasn't here to get trapped. Then everything went dark. A sudden chill enveloped me, and I felt a hand brush against my arm. I whipped around, ready to confront whatever it was. But there was nothing, just the trees closing in around me. My heart raced as fear threatened to engulf me. I had to escape. I scrambled back toward the tent but stumbled, dropping the flashlight. It flickered, and then went out. I was plunged into darkness, the whispers now swirling into a chaotic din around me, whispering incomprehensible words. With no light and no idea where I was going, panic flared up again. I needed to find my way back to the path. I couldn't stay here, not after what I had just seen. Then, before I could make another move, a chilling voice echoed behind me. "You're not alone anymore." I froze. Something was coming for me. I could hardly breathe. The voice had a weight to it, echoing through the darkness like a bell tolling. I felt as if I were being watched, and I could sense movement just beyond my sight. The fear gripped me tighter, squeezing the air from my lungs. I needed to get to safety, but I didn't know where to run. "Who's there?" I called out, the tremble in my voice contradicting my bravado. Silence followed, thick and suffocating, only broken by the distant rustling of leaves. My heart thundered in my chest, almost drowning out the whispers that now felt like they were closing in around me. Then I heard it again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. They were coming closer. I took a step back and felt the ground shift slightly beneath my feet. Panic surged. I had to move. I took off in the direction I hoped the path lay, stumbling over roots and rocks. "Come back," the voice beckoned. It was smoother now, almost inviting, but I knew better. Whatever was in the woods wanted something from me. I could see a faint outline of my tent in the distance, a beacon of what felt like safety. But as I ran, the whispers grew loud again, filling my ears with urgent pleas. "Stay. Stay. Don't leave." "No!" I shouted back, desperate for silence. I couldn't let them pull me in. I had to break free. Suddenly I tripped over a tree root and went sprawling onto the ground. The pendant rattled against my chest. I fumbled to get up, my hands brushing against the earth, feeling the coolness of the soil and the pulsing warmth of the pendant. I remembered the warning of the cloaked figure. Could this pendant be what he meant? With shaking hands I pulled it from my pocket, holding it up. The moonlight caught it, reflecting a strange glow. "What do you want?" I cried out to the darkness. The whispers stilled for a moment, and in that silence, I thought I heard a faint sigh. Then, the underbrush rustled violently. I turned just in time to see a shadow dart behind a tree. It was fast and fluid, unlike anything I had ever seen. With a jolt of terror, I realized I wasn't just being watched. I was being hunted. I took off again, heart racing, this time sprinting toward the tent. I had to warn my friends. They needed to know about the forest, the figure, the whispers. I could feel the cold breath of the unknown creature on my neck as I dashed forward. But when I reached the tent, a new dread settled in. The door was wide open. I hadn't left it like that. "Guys!" I yelled, panic spiraling. Silence answered me, deep and sinister. I glanced back into the trees, feeling an urge to retreat. But I couldn't. Whatever was pursuing me didn't want me alone. I stepped into the tent, scanning the dark corners. It was empty, but that didn't reassure me. Something felt wrong. So wrong. And that's when I noticed something glittering on the ground. A second pendant, identical to mine. But this one was cracked and dull, a warning of the fate that awaited me if I didn't escape this nightmare. I picked it up, and that's when I felt a warm hand grip my shoulder from behind. I jumped, spinning around to face the source of the grip. My heart was pounding in a wild frenzy. What I saw sent chills down my spine. It was a figure shrouded in shadows, its face obscured but its eyes unmistakably locked onto mine. I felt the weight of its gaze as if it were peeling back layers of my very being. "Let go of me!" I gasped, pulling my shoulder away, but the grip tightened for a brief moment. Then, just as suddenly, it released me, stepping back as if it had merely wanted to test my resolve. "Don't be afraid," it said, the voice low and smooth. But it rang with a sinister undertone that made my skin crawl. "You are not meant to be here." "What do you want?" I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. "And where's my friends?" The figure tilted its head slightly, and in that moment, something about it felt familiar, like a distant echo of a dream. "They are part of what you must confront. You brought them here, after all." It gestured toward the darkness of the woods surrounding us. I stepped back, my mind racing. "I didn't bring them. I came to camp. To have fun." "Fun?" It let out a soft, mocking laugh. "This is a place of trials. A trial you have already begun." It pointed to the cracked pendant clutched in my hand. "You must understand what it means." Before I could respond, a loud crash erupted from the woods behind the tent. The figure's expression shifted, concern flickering across its features, a rare glimpse of emotion. "You need to go. Now." I looked past it toward the sound, my instincts screaming at me to bolt. I couldn't stay. The whispers returned, louder and more frantic. "Stay. Stay. With us." "No!" I screamed. Panic surged again, filling my lungs with icy dread. I turned away from the figure, sprinting toward the opening of the tent. But as I crossed the threshold, the world tilted. The tent seemed to shift and stretch around me. It felt like an alternate reality, like I was crossing into a different realm. Outside, the forest was darker than before, trees twisted in unnatural shapes, branches reaching like skeletal fingers. I hesitated, visions of my friends flashing in my mind, but I could feel the presence behind me, pushing me to flee. As I stepped out into the moonlit night, everything went silent. The whispers faded, leaving only my breath and the distant sound of the crash, which now felt like a warning. A figure stepped into the light ahead of me. My heart stopped. It was one of my friends, but there was something wrong. Their eyes were wide yet vacant, like they were seeing something I wasn't. "We need to leave," they said in a voice that was both familiar and distorted. I moved closer, desperate for answers. "What happened? Where's everyone else?" They just pointed toward the depths of the forest, and with that gesture, I understood that our situation was far worse than I had ever imagined. Then I heard it again, a sound from behind me. The figure emerged from the shadows, a mixture of urgency and something darker in its eyes. In a desperate attempt to make sense of this nightmarish scenario, I felt an overwhelming urge to know the truth. But at that moment, the world around us began to shift again and everything went dark. When the darkness settled, I braced myself for whatever horror awaited me on the other side of consciousness. But instead of waking up in the tent, I was thrust into a clearing bathed in eerie moonlight. I stood alone, my friend nowhere in sight. An unsettling quiet surrounded me, the kind that felt heavy and alive. "Guys!" I called out, my voice cracking. No answer echoed back. My heart raced as I scanned the edge of the clearing, trying to spot anyone familiar. The shadows looked like they were shifting, writhing just beyond the trees. I felt like prey in a hunting ground. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. A shadow shifted and morphed into a tangled mass, coalescing into the shape of a figure. It stepped forward, its form more defined now. It was another friend, Emily. Relief washed over me, but it quickly became clear that she too appeared different. Her face was pale, her body trembling as if she was trapped in a dream. "Emily!" I shouted, rushing toward her. "What's happening? Where is everyone?" She lifted her eyes to meet mine, and the vacant expression startled me. "They can't help us," she whispered, her voice an echo of fear. "They aren't themselves anymore." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean? Where are they? Why are we here?" "They've changed." Emily shivered. "The woods. They take people. They use their faces to lure more in. You have to run. We can't stay here." Just as those words left her lips, a low growl resonated from the trees behind her. I froze, my blood turning to ice. It was a sound that churned dread in the pit of my stomach. Emily turned and began to back away, her eyes wide with terror. I looked over my shoulder, instinctually preparing to run, but the growl turned to a spine-chilling roar. From the thicket emerged a beast of macabre form, its body blending into the shadows like a living nightmare. My breath hitched as I realized I was about to be confronted with whatever horrors this forest hid. With nowhere to escape, I darted back toward Emily, grabbing her arm. "We need to move now." We bolted deeper into the woods, the underbrush tearing at my legs as I raced forward. The growling intensified, becoming a symphony of chaos behind us. I could hear branches snapping, a reminder that we were not alone. As we ran, the trees began to close in, forming walls around us. Just when I thought we'd found an escape, a figure appeared a few yards ahead, standing still in the moonlight. I squinted, recognizing it before a wave of dread washed over me again. "Jason?" I called out, pushing through the branches. He stood there, his expression blank, just like the others. "Help us!" Emily screamed, but Jason took a step toward us, his eyes vacant and eerie. Suddenly the shadows shifted, and the growl from the beast surged closer, reverberating in my bones. Then, in a frantic moment of decision, I shoved Emily away from Jason. I felt that instinctual fear that sometimes comes when something isn't quite right. It was then that I understood. We had to get away from whoever this was, even if he looked just like my friend. "Run!" I shouted, praying we had a chance. But as we sprinted away, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already too late. The forest closed in around us, dark and deceptive, and the whispers began again. echoing among the twisted branches. And just as I thought we were escaping, the ground beneath us gave way. That was when everything fell apart. I landed hard, my body hitting the cold, damp earth. Darkness engulfed me as I tumbled down the hole. My thoughts raced, a flurry of fear and confusion. Where was Emily? I scrambled to my feet, brushing away the dirt. I blinked, trying to adjust to the dim light filtering in from the top of the pit. The air was thick with moisture, carrying a musty scent that made my stomach churn. I could barely make out the rough walls of the hole. It felt like some forgotten place, a grave hidden underground. "Emily!" I shouted, my voice echoing eerily around me. Silence met my words. Panic surged through me. I couldn't let this time of uncertainty swallow me whole. I looked for any way out, but the walls seemed steep, slick with soil and roots. Just as I began to feel hopeless, I heard a faint rustling above. I looked up, squinting into the darkness, my heart pounding. Could it be Emily? "Please," I whispered, desperate for an answer. As I raised my hands up, groping for purchase, a voice floated down. It was soft, yet edged with a sinister tone. "You shouldn't have come here." My blood ran cold. I stepped back, looking around. Who's there?" I stammered, the words barely escaping my lips. "Are you afraid?" The voice purred, drawing closer as shadows rippled along the walls. "I'm not afraid," I shouted, though deep down, doubt gnawed at me. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath me and I stumbled, falling against the wall. An opening appeared in the dark, revealing what looked like a tunnel snaking its way out of the pit. Gritting my teeth, I dove toward it, not caring about the hidden dangers that might lie ahead. I had to keep moving, had to find Emily. As I crawled through the opening, the voice followed, taunting. "You'll regret this. They always do." I emerged into another clearing, a space lit by a ghostly glow, as if the moonlight itself had been twisted and turned into something unearthly. I gasped at the sight. Shattered trees lay strewn about like broken toys, and shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. "Emily!" I yelled again, but the air felt heavy, stifling. My mind raced. What if she was gone? What if I was all alone in this nightmare? My breath caught when I saw a figure in the distance. I sprinted toward it, heart pounding with hope. But as I drew closer, I felt uncertainty creep back in. The figure turned slowly. "Is it you?" I whispered, trembling. It was Emily again, but her eyes were wide and unfocused, a hollow stare that paralleled the others. "No, it can't be you." I took a step back, dread pooling in my stomach. "What happened to you?" She raised a hand toward me, her lips moving without sound, as if trying to speak through some unseen barrier. I wanted to reach for her, but the way her eyes shifted filled me with terror. Then the growl returned, its menacing echo growing louder, wrapping around us like a noose. "Get away!" I screamed, realizing whatever had taken my friends was closing in. The horrible truth washed over me like ice water. This was all part of it. I had to escape. But as I turned to run, I glanced back one last time. Emily stood frozen, eerily still as the shadows began to wrap around her. With no choice left, I bolted into another set of trees, my thoughts racing. That's when I saw it. An ancient stone archway partially hidden by the underbrush. Maybe it led to freedom. The growl faded for a moment, replaced by a chilling silence. But something whispered in the air, a warning that sent shivers down my spine. "Don't go through there." I hesitated. What should I do? I took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. The archway loomed before me, a dark passage that hinted at secrets better left undiscovered. It was unsettling, this soft whisper urging me to turn back, but the growl was a reminder that danger was right behind me. Think, I muttered to myself. Should I enter? Or should I continue away from this unsettling place? Without Emily, I felt like I was floating through a waking nightmare. I glanced over my shoulder. The shadows stretched and ebbed, and for a brief moment I thought I saw something move. I squinted, peering into the dark trees. The rustle grew louder, more frantic. Whatever was hunting me was getting closer. With a shaky resolve, I stepped toward the archway. The idea of turning back felt like a death sentence. I needed to know if it led somewhere, anywhere but here. I pushed through the thorny branches surrounding the entrance, each scratch against my skin screaming for me to stop. Inside, the air shifted, cooler and heavier, wrapping around me like a dense fog. A faint light glinted off the stones, illuminating symbols carved into the archway. I traced a finger along the lines, confusion flooding my thoughts. They pulsed with a strange energy, almost alive, whispering warnings I couldn't decipher. Then, I heard it again, a guttural sound echoing in the distance. I froze, breath hitching in my throat. It wasn't just a growl this time. It was something more like a chant, layered with voices that seemed to echo from another time. I stumbled deeper into the tunnel, no longer sure of my purpose. I had to find Emily. I had to escape this madness. Panic clawed at my insides, urging me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. As I ventured deeper into the archway, I spotted something. A faint, glowing orb hovering just ahead. It flickered like a flame, casting eerie shadows that danced along the slick walls. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity burned stronger. Raising my hand, I stepped forward cautiously. I was close enough now to see the orb was not just a trick of light. It flickered like a heartbeat, pulsating with potential. Just as I reached for it, the ground quaked again, rumbling underfoot. I stumbled back, the orb dimming with the tremor. The chanting grew louder, voices rising in an anguished crescendo all around me. "Leave!" they wailed, reverberating off the stone walls, an unmistakable demand. I turned and ran, adrenaline coursing through me. The shadows seemed to snatch at my heels as I dashed through the archway, desperate to return to daylight. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay ahead wasn't safe, and yet I was terrified of what I might find behind me too. I burst out of the tunnel and tumbled onto the forest floor, gasping for air. I looked around, trying to catch my breath and gather my thoughts. Trees loomed over me like silent witnesses, but the sense of impending dread followed closely. I forced myself to focus. "Emily!" I shouted again, the urgency in my voice stronger than I felt. But no answer came, and then I heard it. A faint whisper carried on the wind, a familiar voice calling my name. It sent chills racing down my spine. I had to find her. Whatever was happening, whatever darkness lurked in this place, I wouldn't leave without her. With renewed determination, I plunged back into the shadows. My mind spun with uncertainty, but this time, the desperate tether of hope pulled me forward. The shadows thickened around me as I retraced my steps through the trees. Each time I shouted Emily's name, the wind swallowed it, leaving only echoes in its wake. It was a chilling reminder that I was utterly alone out here. Then a rustle caught my attention, sharper than the wind. I turned, my heart racing anew. My instincts told me I wasn't alone, but the forest offered no clues, just the oppressive darkness and my own ragged breath. I squinted into the shadows, searching for movement, but I saw nothing. "Emily?" I called again, my voice trembling slightly. I felt foolish for hoping she'd somehow answer. I continued onward, navigating the familiar paths I had once walked with her, memories flooding back. I thought about how carefree we'd been, laughing and telling stories around a campfire. Now, it seemed like another lifetime, a cruel contrast to the heaviness pressing down on me. Suddenly I noticed a break in the trees ahead. A small clearing bathed in silvery moonlight gleamed like a beacon. I stepped forward with hesitant anticipation. Maybe it was a way out, a sign. As I crossed into the opening, the air changed again, thickening with tension. That's when I saw it. At the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, old and weathered. The same symbols I'd seen in the archway were engraved on its surface, twinkling faintly under the moon. A chill ran through me. An unsettling feeling stirred, as if the very ground was charged with forgotten energy. I approached cautiously, each step careful. My fingers brushed against the stone, and a shock of coldness shot up my arm. Before I could react, the chanting returned, echoing louder than before, enveloping me in a ghostly embrace. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The voices held a strange familiarity, yet they were distorted, as if warped by time. "What do you want?" I gasped, my voice shaky against the chorus of wails. Suddenly, I noticed a flicker of movement from the edge of the clearing. A figure materialized, just a shade darker than the forest behind it. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. "Emily?" I whispered, desperate. But the figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised a hand, pointing toward the altar. Then everything went dark. The moonlight vanished, leaving nothing but an oppressive void. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, the air growing heavy with dread. The chanting morphed into a frenzied roar, an unholy symphony demanding something I could not understand. Panic surged through me. "No, not now!" I screamed, bringing my hands to my ears to drown out the noise. I whirled around, trying to find the edge of the clearing, but the darkness had swallowed any potential escape, and just as quickly as it had disappeared, light flickered back, glowing from the altar. In shock, I stared at it, confusion flooding my mind. I had been standing in front of some ancient, otherworldly power, but what did it want with me? The weight of the moment pushed me forward again. I had to approach, had to understand why Emily had been drawn here in the first place. But as I took a step closer, a shiver ran down my spine. The figure was gone. I was truly alone. With trembling hands, I reached toward the altar once more, driven by instinct. What lay ahead was unknown, but I couldn't stop. Not until I found Emily. Not until I uncovered this unfolding nightmare. The moment my fingers grazed the cold surface of the altar, everything changed. A surge of energy crackled through me, sending shockwaves along my spine. The whispers transformed into a cacophony, a chorus of voices merging into a singular resonating tone that seemed to reverberate within me. "You've come to understand," the voices declared. "You've come to face the truth." "Face what truth?" I shouted, as if my words could dispel the weight of their presence. Shouldn't I have been terrified? I felt raw courage surging through me, a stubborn flame ignited in the depths of my soul. "Where's Emily? Is this about her?" But the voices circled around me, weaving into my thoughts like a dark thread, relentless and heavy. I half expected to see Emily materialize, her face twisted in confusion or horror, but the clearing remained eerily still. The darkness pressed in like a vice, the shadows alive and threatening to envelop me completely. Then suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows and my heart jolted in recognition. It was Emily again, yet something was unmistakably off. Her eyes reminded me of glass, empty, devoid of warmth. "Emily!" I cried, but she merely stared into space, as if lost in a memory too distant to reach. "Please, it's me." She took a step forward, but then flinched as if afraid. "You shouldn't have approached the altar. It seeks to claim those who venture too close." Her voice was soft, laced with concern, but I could hear the tremor of fear beneath the surface. "What do you mean?" I pressed, unwilling to let go of hope. "You're here. We can leave together." But she wouldn't look me in the eye. "It won't let us go. Not now. Not until it gathers what it desires from us." "What does it want?" My voice came out as a desperate whisper. It was then that the chanting arose again, louder and more chaotic. An omnipotent force surged, and I grasped the altar tighter, feeling its ancient energy pulsing against my skin. I was beginning to piece together the fragments of this nightmare. "You have to run. We can't stay here. It will take everyone," Emily warned. I could see the strife etched deeply across her brow, the war between her true self and whatever darkness had claimed her. "I won't leave you," I shouted defiantly, the words feeling far more powerful than they should have. The shadows flickered around us as if my determination challenged the very fabric of their existence. In an instant, the ground trembled again, a violent quake ripping through the clearing. "Leave!" the voices screamed, shaking the trees and scattering leaves. The pulsing from the altar intensified, and I suddenly understood it was not just an ancient structure. It was a gateway, one that thrived on fear, on grief, on despair. But I hesitated, feeling the moment slip through my fingers. I looked at Emily, my heart aching, realizing how deeply this forest had dealt its cards. "I have to try," I murmured, clutching the pendant in my pocket, the warmth unfolding in my palm like a gentle heartbeat. I spun around to face the altar, something within me ignited. "If you seek to claim her," I yelled at the darkness, "then you must deal with me first." In that moment, the shadows recoiled slightly, as if I had challenged them. The growls morphed back into whispers of uncertainty, a chaos of conflicting desires swirling through the air. Then, as if awakening from a deep slumber, the altar began to glow with a radiant light, bathing the clearing in luminescence, pushing back the darkness. I looked again toward Emily, who stood spellbound, shimmering with an ethereal glow as the light reached toward her like a constellation. "You can do this," I cried, feeling the connection pulse between us. "Fight it. I'm with you." The shadows surrounding her flickered, and with a clarity like a crashing wave, she jumped back into reality, eyes widening like a star igniting. "Let go of the fear," she shouted, breaking free from the constraints in her voice. "We are stronger than this." With that, a tumultuous roar erupted, an explosion of primal energy and rage. The forest seemed to cry out, branches twisting in agony, as if the trees themselves were protesting our defiance. But we stood firm, hands clasped together, unyielding against the tide. The altar glowed brighter still, suffusing us with heat. "I won't lose you," I vowed, and then, as if the very nature of the forest accepted our resolve, the shadows shrank away, pulling back into the depths of darkness where they belonged. The voices faded, their angry wails dissipating into silence. With one last surge, the altar exploded in blinding light, flinging us backward. I felt myself falling, tumbling into a hazy void, darkness swallowing everything until I gasped for air, suddenly lying on cool grass, the sounds of chirping crickets filling my ears. I blinked rapidly, disoriented, only to see the sun rising over Pinewood Forest, spilling golden light into the morning fog. "Emily?" I gasped, heart beating rapidly, scanning the area frantically. My friend lay beside me, still sleeping under the warm sun, her face peaceful and unburdened. I shook her gently, anxiety flooding my senses. When she stirred, her eyes fluttered open, and she smiled. "You're back?" she murmured, still half asleep. I could hardly believe my eyes, relief rushing through me like a wave. We escaped," I whispered, but in the pit of my gut, I felt echoes of the shadows we left behind, swirling like smoke. But how much of it was in my head? I looked back toward the forest, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw a dark figure watching. Is it really all over? "Hey, you okay?" Emily's voice broke through my reverie, her brow furrowed in concern. "Yeah," I lied too easily, swallowing the lingering dread hard in my throat. We stood up, the weight of the forest heavy on my shoulders. Somehow, it felt like the forest would always linger in the background of my mind, a haunting memory I may never fully comprehend. I would always wonder if the darkness returned to claim others, adventurers lost in the depths, drawn by the promise of illuminated freedom. But as we walked away, I clutched the crescent moon pendant in my pocket, feeling its warmth against my palm, reminding me that in the face of uncertainty, sometimes the light can guide us home. I moved forward, but some stories remain incomplete. The truth wrapped in shadows and whispers, forever echoing in the sanctuary of Pinewood Forest.